The day began like any other day, calm and slow, with a soft sky hanging over the settlement. People gathered near the open grounds where the visiting guests had arrived earlier that morning. These guests were not human. They came from far beyond Earth, invited for a rare exchange meant to build trust. Many had never seen beings like them before, and even those who had only knew them from screens and stories. The alien families stayed close together. Their bodies looked different. Their skin carried colors not found in nature on Earth, and their movements were careful and alert. Among them was a mother holding her small child. The child stayed pressed against her side, wide eyes taking in the crowd. Every sound felt too loud. Every sudden movement felt like danger. The humans watching were mixed in their feelings. Some were excited. Some were curious. Others were nervous or uneasy. A few whispered comments that carried fear more than understanding. Security stood nearby, but even they looked unsure. This was not something anyone dealt with every day. A human man stood a little apart from the crowd. He had not come for history or politics. He worked nearby and had only stopped because of the noise and movement. He watched quietly, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning faces. He noticed the alien child before anything else. Not because the child looked strange, but because the child looked scared in a way he recognized. The mother noticed him watching and pulled the child closer. Her body stiffened. She had learned that humans could be unpredictable. She had also learned that fear could come without warning. The exchange began peacefully. Officials spoke. Translators worked. Cameras hovered. People clapped at the right moments. Everything felt controlled, almost rehearsed. But under the surface, tension stayed alive. It only took one shout to break that control at first. It sounded like someone arguing. Then another voice joined in, louder and sharper. The crowd shifted. People turned their heads. A few steps back became many. The alien mother felt it before she understood it. Her grip tightened around her child. A small group pushed forward from the edge of the crowd. Their faces were hard, filled with anger and fear mixed together. One of them pointed straight at the alien child and yelled words that made no sense but carried hate clearly enough. Security moved. But too slowly, the child froze. The mother stepped back, shielding the child with her body, her heart racing. She searched for a way out, but the space felt closed. Humans pressed in from all sides, not attacking but not helping either. Fear spread faster than order. The man saw the shift before the attack truly started. He felt something drop in his chest, a warning that something was wrong. He saw the child's eyes go wide. He saw the mother's panic. He did not think. He did not plan. The first object flew through the air, missing its target, but landing close enough to send the message. Screams broke out. People ran. Some ducked. Others pulled out devices to record instead of act. The man ran forward. Someone shouted at him to stop. Another voice yelled for security. None of it mattered. His focus locked on the small body shaking behind the alien mother. Before the mother could react, he was there. He pushed past her gently but firmly, turning his body sideways and then forward. Out. Placing himself between the attackers and the child. His arms spread without thought, his back hunched, his head lowered. The next impact hit his shoulder. Pain shot through him, sharp and heavy, but he stayed where he was. Another hit came, then another. He heard the mother cry out behind him, her voice strange and broken. He felt hands pulling at his jacket, trying to move him aside. He did not move. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He simply stayed there, taking every blow meant for someone smaller and weaker. Security finally broke through. Orders were shouted. The attackers were forced back. The crowd scattered. The noise slowly faded into a ringing silence. The man fell to one knee, breath heavy, vision blurred. Strong hands caught him before he could collapse fully. He felt the ground beneath him, cold and steady. Behind him, the alien child was still alive. Still untouched, the mother knelt beside them, shaking. One hand hovering near the man as if unsure whether she was allowed to touch him. Her eyes stayed fixed on his face, trying to understand what had just happened. This human had no reason to do what he did, He did not know her. He did not know her child. There was no reward waiting for him, no promise of safety. Yet he had chosen pain without hesitation. Sirens grew louder. Medical teams rushed in. The man was lifted onto a stretcher, his body stiff with shock. As they moved him away, his eyes opened briefly. They found the alien child's face. He tried to smile. The mother pressed her child against her chest, tears forming in eyes that rarely cried. She watched as the human was taken away, leaving behind silence and a moment that would not be forgotten. That day was meant to be about peace. Instead, it became about sacrifice, and nothing would ever feel the same again. The room smelled of antiseptic, a sharp scent that made the man cough as he was carefully laid onto a narrow bed. Machines beeped around him, and bright lights hung from the ceiling, unblinking. Nurses and doctors moved quickly, voices calm but urgent, asking questions he'd barely heard. His body ached from every direction. Pain radiated through his shoulders, arms, and legs. Cuts and bruises marked where the blows had landed. But it was not the physical pain that weighed on him most. He thought of the child. He thought of the mother, standing frozen, watching, and of the sudden chaos that had erupted. He could still hear the shouting, the angry voices, and the crowd scattering. He could still feel the weight of the child pressing into him, even when he was alone in the room. The memory burned like fire, and he wondered why it had chosen him to act. The nurses worked around him without pause, checking vitals, cleaning wounds, and adjusting the monitors. The man did not speak. He only nodded when asked simple questions. His mind replayed every moment of the attack, the speed of it, the fear on the child's face, and how quickly he had thrown himself in front of it all. It was a reaction, instinctive and without thought, but it felt like it had changed him. Outside, the alien mother had not left the child's side. She held the small one close, whispering words in a language no one else understood. Her eyes searched the crowd, the settlement, and the space where the man had been before he was taken. She did not know why he had done it, and yet she felt a pull of gratitude, and something deeper, something like awe. That human had risked his life for hers and for her child without hesitation. She had never imagined such courage. Existed in one of their kinds, security had allowed only a few close humans to enter the room. Among them were officials who had watched the entire scene unfold. They were impressed, yes, but they were also cautious. No one had expected a human to act with such selflessness. It changed the narrative of the day from curiosity to astonishment. Hours passed slowly. The man's body needed rest, but his mind would not allow it. He remembered the child's tiny hands pressing against him. He remembered the wide, frightened eyes and the way they seemed to plead for protection. He remembered the mother's scream and the chaos around them. That image would not leave him. Eventually, a doctor came closer. She was human, calm, and attentive, with a soft voice that seemed to reach him through the fog of pain. She spoke gently, explaining each step she would take to ensure he healed. Her words were simple, but they carried care. For the first time, he allowed himself to focus on something other than memory and pain. Meanwhile, the alien mother had grown bolder. She moved closer to the human's room when officials allowed it. She wanted to see him, the one who had saved her child. She needed to understand who he was, why he had done what he did. Her people watched, confused by her interest in a human. It was rare for them to connect so personally with one from another world. Yet she felt it necessary, almost instinctively. The child stayed quiet, still trembling. When the mother whispered softly, the small hands reached toward the door where the man lay. There was a sense of recognition, of trust, that had been formed in a moment of danger. The child's eyes did not leave the human. Even in the security of the mother's arms, there was a longing to see him again. Back in the room, the man finally spoke. His voice was low, strained, but it carried a firmness that surprised even him. He asked about the child, about the mother, about whether they were safe. The nurse smiled gently, answering as best she could. He listened intently. The world outside was quiet now, but he could feel that life had shifted irrevocably. Nothing was as it had been before. Visitors came to check on him, some from the settlement, some from distant places. Each one had heard the story, each one had seen what had happened. They spoke of bravery, of sacrifice, of the human heart capable of acts beyond calculation. But he shrugged off their praise. He had not thought about heroism in the moment. He had acted because he could not do otherwise. The alien mother finally entered the room, escorted by officials who kept their distance. Her eyes were steady, searching the man's face. She spoke a few words in her language, the sound melodic, soft, carrying warmth and relief. The man did not understand the words fully, but the tone reached him. It felt like gratitude, like respect, and something else he could not name yet. The mother knelt a short distance away, not wanting to crowd him, yet refusing to leave. She gestured toward the child, and the man understood. He gave a small nod. There was a silent agreement between them. He had saved her child. She knew it. She acknowledged it. And in that acknowledgement a bond was forming, fragile but undeniable. As night fell, the settlement quieted. People whispered about the day's events, about the courage they had witnessed. Some wondered what it meant for future relations between humans and aliens. Others simply marveled at the human who had risked his life without question. In the quiet room, the man lay back, letting his body relax slightly, though his mind remained alert. He thought of the child and the mother, of the tiny life he had protected, and of the unexpected weight of his own actions. The experience had left him with a new understanding of fear, of responsibility, and of connection. Outside, the alien mother stayed vigilant, her child asleep against her shoulder. She thought about the human and what he had done. She could not stop replaying the moment when he had thrown himself in front of her child. It was a moment she would carry forever. A moment that changed her view of humans entirely. In the days that followed, the man's wounds healed slowly. Every movement reminded him of the day of the child's fear, and of the decision he had made without hesitation. Visitors continued to come, bringing food, supplies, and messages of thanks from both human and alien communities. The man accepted what he needed but did not seek attention. He only wanted to be ready for the day he might see the child again, and through it all, the bond between the human and the alien child remained unseen but powerful. It was formed in a single, dangerous moment, yet it would shape the lives of all involved. It was a bond that could not be explained fully, not in words or gestures. It existed in glances, in presence, in shared recognition of fear, protection, and trust. The human who had acted without thought, the alien mother who watched in disbelief and gratitude, and the small child who had been saved all were changed. Life in the settlement would continue, but the memory of that day would linger, guiding choices, shaping relationships, and reminding everyone that courage and care could bridge worlds. Days passed slowly after the attack, each one feeling longer than the last. The settlement had returned to a calm that seemed fragile, as if the memory of chaos still lingered in every shadow. People spoke quietly, avoiding loud noises that reminded them of that day. Children who had been nearby were kept indoors, and visitors moved cautiously through the streets. The human man had left the hospital but still moved carefully, his body stiff and his mind restless. He thought often of the alien child. The child's small face, wide eyes, and trembling hands haunted him. He had protected that life with every ounce of strength he could find, yet he felt it was not enough. He worried that even though the child had survived, experience would leave fear that no time could erase. The alien mother visited quietly. She rarely entered human spaces openly, as many of her people still watched her with curiosity and suspicion. But she could not stop herself. She had to see him, the one who had risked everything for her child. When she arrived, she stood just outside the small garden where he sat, waiting for her to speak. He looked up, nodded, and offered a small smile that was more exhaustion than warmth. But it was received as enough. The child followed her closely, eyes scanning for the human. When the mother pointed, the small one took tentative steps forward. The first time they were allowed to meet, the child hesitated, unsure if it was safe. Then the memory of protection, of safety in the human's arms, overcame hesitation. The small hands reached out, and the human lowered himself slowly, letting the child approach. There was no fear now, only recognition. The bond was silent but immediate. The human felt it, the child felt it, and even the mother could see it in the way the child relaxed. It was not something that could be explained to others icily, yet it was undeniable. Time moved differently for them in those moments, and the world outside felt distant. Officials and security kept a respectful distance. They watched carefully, but did not interfere. Even those who had previously doubted the human's intentions now found themselves impressed by the quiet care he showed. He did not hold the child constantly, but he remained close enough that the small one felt secure. He did not speak much, only offering soft encouragement, allowing the child to explore and move without fear. The mother finally spoke, her voice carrying the weight of gratitude, concern, and something else she could not name. She explained that the attack had shaken their people deeply. She spoke of fear that the child might never trust others again, of worry that the settlement might not be safe for them. And yet, she admitted quietly, the human had changed that fear in a single, astonishing moment. She looked at him directly, searching for understanding. He shrugged lightly, saying nothing of heroism, only that he had done what felt right. The days became a routine of cautious observation. The human spent hours with the child, guiding, supporting, and protecting in small ways that seemed ordinary, but were extraordinary to the small one. He taught gentle games, simple lessons, and quiet ways to feel safe in a world that could be unpredictable. Each day, trust grew, and the child's laughter began to return, small at first, but growing louder and more confident with every passing moment. The mother watched silently most of the time. She did not intervene unless necessary. Her presence was steady, a reminder that the child was safe and cared for, yet she allowed the human to guide these moments. She began to understand that his actions were not motivated by duty or expectation, but by something deeply human: compassion. She had never seen such genuine care directed at one of her people. It unsettled her and amazed her all at once. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, the human and the child sat beneath a large tree. The air was warm but soft, carrying scents from the nearby fields. The child asked questions about Earth, about why the humans behaved the way they did, and the human answered slowly, choosing words carefully. The conversation was simple but meaningful. Each answer built bridges of understanding that went beyond language. The child's curiosity was no longer tinged with fear, but with wonder. The mother stood nearby, watching silently. She noticed how the human responded, not just with words, but with presence, patience, and attention. It was an education not only for the child, but for her as well. She had begun to see humans in a new light, not just as unpredictable creatures, but as beings capable of courage, care, and connection. At night, the child slept more peacefully, often near the human when permitted. Dreams were calmer, and even when nightmares returned, a small hand reaching out for the human brought comfort instantly. The mother would watch, feeling a strange mix of relief and protectiveness. She could not deny the bond that had formed, nor could she ignore the gratitude she felt toward the human who had risked everything. The settlement itself began to change in subtle ways. People who had observed the incident started to see humans differently. Stories of courage and selflessness spread quietly, influencing opinions and hearts alike. Even those who had felt fear at the alien's presence began to wonder about the human who had acted without fear or hesitation. He had become a quiet symbol of the possibility of trust and unity. Despite all the attention, the human remained grounded. He did not seek recognition, and he did not dwell on the past. His focus stayed on the child and the well-being of the small life he had helped save. Each day he moved carefully, aware of both his own limits and the importance of presence. It was not grand gestures that mattered now, but the simple acts of guidance, reassurance, and protection that created trust and safety. One evening, the mother finally spoke in a tone that carried no questions, no hesitations, only acknowledgement. She expressed what words could barely capture: that she owed him a debt she could not repay, that the child would forever remember his courage, and that she could not forget the man who had stood between life and harm without hesitation. The human listened quietly, understanding without needing to respond. The acknowledgement was enough. The child smiled, small and tentative at first, then more confidently. The human responded with the same quiet warmth, a connection forming without the need for words. In those moments, the past seemed distant, and the present carried a rare clarity and purpose. Trust had taken root, and in its place, a bond that defied explanation had grown stronger every day. The settlement settled into this rhythm, cautious yet hopeful. The human, the child, and the mother moved through each day aware of dangers and uncertainties, but strengthened by trust and care. Every glance, every small gesture, every quiet moment together reinforced the connection that had begun in a moment of fear and courage. And as the sun set each evening, casting long shadows over the settlement, there was a sense that something had shifted forever. The human who had acted without thought, the child who had been saved, and the mother who had watched in awe, had begun to weave a new story. It was a story of courage, trust, and the quiet, transformative power of human care. It was a story that would not be forgotten, shaping lives and hearts in ways that no one could have predicted. Time passed, and the bond between the human, the child, and the mother grew stronger. Each day carried small routines, small moments that quietly reshaped their lives. The human's actions had become more than a single act of courage. They had become a steady presence in the child's life. He guided, protected, encouraged in ways that felt natural to him, but extraordinary to the child and the mother. The mother watched closely. She observed how he responded to the child's questions, how he offered comfort without words, and how he stood silently ready to act at a moment's notice. She could see the love forming, quiet and patient, but it stirred emotions in her she did not fully understand. She felt gratitude, yes, but also a growing admiration and respect that went beyond simple thanks. This human had risked his life for her child, and now he had become a part of their world in a way no one could ignore. One morning, the settlement prepared for a gathering to acknowledge the events that had occurred. Officials from both human and alien communities were present, along with journalists, observers, and families who had been impacted by the attack. The human had been invited quietly, reluctantly, as he preferred to avoid attention, but the mother insisted. She wanted him there, to see what had begun to take shape because of his actions. The crowd filled the open square, whispers and soft exclamations spreading among the people. The mother stood with her child close by, her presence calm yet commanding. She had made the decision, internally and firmly, that the human would be recognized not only for his courage, but for the bond he had formed with her family. The child looked up at her, small hands holding tight to her side, sensing the significance of the moment, even if the words were unfamiliar. When the human arrived, he was cautious. He scanned the crowd, noting the officials, the cameras, and the people who had come to witness. He felt out of place, as he always did in gatherings, yet he could not deny the importance. He had not sought this, but the mother's insistence left little room to refuse. She had taken the decision upon herself, and he could only follow. The mother stepped forward when the crowd quieted. Her voice rang out clearly, carrying both authority and emotion. She spoke in her language first, her words precise, strong, and measured, yet the tone conveyed something deeper than mere speech. Then, through translation devices, her message reached the ears of every listener. She declared that the human who had defended her child was now under her protection. She said simply, firmly, "The human is mine." Gasps spread through the crowd. Some did not understand immediately. Some whispered with disbelief. Others nodded slowly in recognition of the significance. It was not a claim of possession in a cruel or restrictive sense. It was a vow of honor and respect. The mother had seen the human risk his life without hesitation, without question, and she could not allow that act to be ignored. She claimed him in gratitude, in acknowledgement, and in recognition of the bond that had grown between them. The human stood silently. He did not speak, did not gesture. He looked at the mother and then at the child, understanding the depth of what had been declared. He felt a mixture of humility and unease. He had never sought recognition, never imagined that one act of instinct could carry such meaning. Yet he understood now that his actions had changed more than one life. They had changed the course of relationships between species, between individuals, and between communities. The child reached out to him, small hands grasping gently at his arm. In that touch, there was understanding, trust, and joy. The human bent slightly, offering a soft smile, nodding. That silent acknowledgement was enough. Words were unnecessary. The bond had already spoken for itself. Observers watched closely. Some moved to tears, some inspired by the courage displayed, and some simply awed by the human's quiet presence and the mother's powerful declaration. For many, it was a moment that challenged assumptions about fear, otherness, and connection. It was a moment that proved that actions, not words, could define trust and honor. After the ceremony, the human and the mother spoke privately, though still within sight of the crowd. She thanked him in her own language, again expressing something that words could not fully capture. The human replied modestly, insisting only that he had done what anyone would have done. She shook her head, understanding clearly that this act had gone far beyond ordinary behavior. It had been extraordinary in courage, in selflessness, and in the impact it had left. The child, sensing the attention on them, stayed close to both adults. Comforted by the human's presence and the mother's steady reassurance, the small one had grown noticeably more confident, laughing quietly, exploring nearby spaces with a cautious curiosity. The human's patient guidance and protection had allowed the child to reclaim a sense of safety that had been lost in the attack. It was a slow, gentle process, but each day brought growth, laughter, and a quiet security that radiated through the small family unit. Days turned into weeks, and the settlement began to settle into a new normal. The human's presence became accepted, expected even, by the child and the mother. They moved together through daily routines, sharing meals, walking through gardens, and sitting quietly in contemplation or play. The human did not speak much of his past, his life before the attack, or his own fears. Instead, he focused on the child, on providing steady support and care, and on ensuring that the mother saw the child thriving once more. The mother, in turn, began to include him in more decisions, offering guidance, sharing insights, and allowing him to act with autonomy in caring for her child. It was a mutual respect, a recognition of roles that were not defined by species or tradition, but by action and commitment. Through this quiet cooperation, their bond deepened further. Visible to all who watched, but fully understood only by the three of them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the mother, the child, and the human sat together beneath the same tree where so many small moments had been shared. The air was warm, carrying the faint sense of nearby fields and gardens. The human listened to the child's questions, responded with care and patience, and offered guidance in ways that were gentle but firm. The mother watched, her heart filled with an acknowledgement of the depth of the connection, the courage, and the trust that had grown. She realized then that her declaration, the human is mine, had been more than a statement of gratitude. It was a recognition of the courage and selflessness that had changed their lives. It was a vow that the human would always be a part of their lives, a protector, a guide, and a friend. It was a promise that could not be broken, no matter what challenges might arise. The child, sensing the significance, leaned against the human, small hands holding tight. The human responded with a gentle, reassuring touch. In that moment, words were unnecessary. Their bond, forged in danger and nurtured in care, spoke louder than any declaration could. The mother smiled softly, understanding that this quiet, steadfast connection would shape their lives in ways that could not yet be fully seen. As night fell and stars appeared in the sky, the settlement quieted. People whispered of the human's courage, of the mother's powerful words, and of the bond that had formed between them. Stories spread slowly, inspiring others, reminding everyone that even in moments of fear and chaos, courage, compassion, and trust could create connections that defied expectation. The human, the child, and the mother returned to their small routines. Each aware of the significance of the day's events, the human remained humble, patient, and present. The mother remained vigilant, grateful, and respectful. The child remained curious, trusting, and happy. Together, they had forged something rare and beautiful, a bond that crossed worlds, a promise that would endure, and a quiet story of courage, care that would be remembered long after the immediate dangers had passed. Life in the settlement gradually settled into a rhythm. But it was different now. The events that had brought fear and chaos had also created bonds that no one could have predicted. The human, the alien child, and the mother were no longer just participants in a fleeting story of courage. They had become a family of sorts, linked by trust, respect, and shared experience. The human continued to live among them, his presence steady and unobtrusive. He did not seek praise or attention, though people offered it freely. Officials and neighbors alike admired him. But he remained focused on what mattered most, ensuring the child was safe, happy, and confident. Each morning, he would rise early, walking through the quiet streets to meet the mother and child. Together, they would explore gardens, walk along paths that meandered through the settlement, or simply sit quietly. Sharing the comfort of presence without words, the child had grown in courage and confidence. Laughter returned fully now, ringing clear across the open spaces where fear had once reigned. The human was patient, guiding gently, never pushing too hard, never expecting more than the child could give. Through these small actions, the child learned that the world could be safe, that humans could be trusted, and that care could be quiet yet unwavering. The mother watched these interactions closely, her heart full of gratitude and something deeper she did not yet name. She saw the bond strengthening, unbreakable, forming the foundation of a new life. The settlement itself changed too. People who had once been hesitant about the aliens now approached with curiosity and kindness. Stories of courage spread quietly among families, teaching lessons about bravery, trust, and the importance of standing up for others. The human became a symbol, not of heroism and grand gestures, but of the quiet, steadfast power of care and presence. His actions reminded everyone that ordinary humans could perform extraordinary acts when driven by empathy and courage. The mother and the human spoke often. Though their conversations were brief and simple, they shared insights about the child, exchanged observations about life in the settlement, and occasionally discussed the strange and unpredictable world outside their immediate surroundings. Through these exchanges, trust and understanding deepened. It was a partnership built not on obligation, but on respect and shared purpose. The human learned more about the mother's culture, her fears, her hopes, and her love for her child. She learned more about his heart, his quiet courage, and his unassuming dedication. One evening, as the sun began to set, the three of them sat beneath the same large tree that had witnessed so many small, meaningful moments. The child leaned against the human, hands intertwined with his, while the mother watched them with soft eyes. There was a stillness, a sense that the world outside had paused for this brief moment. It was a peacefulness born not from absence of danger, but from presence of trust and safety. In those quiet moments, the mother spoke softly, words carrying across the fading light. She did not need translation devices for this. The human understood the tone, the intent, the emotion behind each word. She expressed her gratitude, her amazement, and her respect. She acknowledged that the bond formed in crisis had grown into something far more profound. She had declared once that the human is mine, and that declaration had become more than a statement. It had become a promise, a recognition of shared courage, and an affirmation of connection. The human nodded, understanding fully. He did not speak of ownership or reward. His presence, his care, and his courage were enough. The child smiled, eyes bright, and nestled closer, a small hand reaching for reassurance. In that simple touch, the human felt the full weight and reward of what he had done. He realized that the moment of protection had grown into an enduring relationship, one that would shape lives in ways no one could have anticipated. The community began to see the fruits of these quiet bonds. Relations between humans and aliens improved steadily, guided not by laws or mandates but by example. The courage, care, and respect demonstrated by one human had rippled outward, influencing neighbors, families, and even officials. Where fear had once existed, understanding and cooperation began to take root. The child thrived in this environment, laughing, learning, and exploring without the constant shadow of fear. The human's patient guidance ensured that each day brought new growth and confidence. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The human continued his steady presence, attending to small needs, offering protection, and quietly fostering trust. The mother allowed him autonomy, respecting his decisions and judgment, while also providing guidance and care where needed. Their partnership became a model of mutual respect and dedication, demonstrating that courage and compassion could bridge worlds and create something enduring. Occasionally, the settlement faced challenges. Minor accidents, misunderstandings, and occasional fear still emerged. But they were met with patience, presence, and guidance rather than panic. The child learned to navigate these situations with confidence, always knowing that the human was near, always ready to offer support or protection. The mother observed, her respect and admiration deepening, understanding fully that the human's actions had created a foundation of safety and trust that would not be easily shaken through it all. The human remained humble, his focus unwavering. He did not seek recognition or glory. His acts were quiet, consistent, and deeply human. He became a living example of courage, not in moments of drama, but in everyday care, protection, and steadfast presence. The settlement, once marked by fear and uncertainty, now echoed with laughter, curiosity, and cautious optimism. One afternoon, as the sun cast golden light across the fields, the human walked with the child along a familiar path. The mother followed closely, observing the small interactions that had become routine but were filled with meaning. The child asked questions about life, about the world, and about the human's experiences. The human answered patiently, offering guidance, insight, and care without imposing authority. The mother watched quietly, realizing that the human had become more than a protector. He had become a teacher, a guide, and a friend. Evenings were spent in quiet reflection, sitting beneath the same tree, sharing stories, laughter, and moments of stillness. The human did not need to speak often. His presence alone communicated care and reassurance. The mother and child relied on this presence, understanding fully that trust had been earned, not demanded. In these moments, they were a family, connected not by blood or species, but by courage, care, and enduring commitment. As time went on, the impact of that single act of bravery, the moment when the human had thrown himself in front of the child, continued to ripple outward. Stories spread beyond the settlement, inspiring others to act with courage and care. Officials, neighbors, and families learned that heroism was not always grand or dramatic, but often quiet, patient, and human. The human's actions had created more than a bond. They had set an example that could influence generations. The child grew stronger, more confident, and curious about the world. The human remained a guiding presence, always nearby, offering reassurance and support. The mother watched, her respect and gratitude deepening daily. She understood that the human's courage had created a lasting impact, one that would continue to shape lives in ways visible and invisible. One night, under a sky full of stars, the human, the child, and the mother sat together. The air was cool, carrying soft scents from the fields and gardens nearby. They shared a quiet moment of understanding, a moment that did not need words. The child rested against the human. The mother observed with soft eyes, and the human felt the quiet fulfillment of a life changed by courage and care. The settlement, once marked by fear and uncertainty, had transformed into a place of trust, laughter, and hope. The human's actions had bridged worlds, creating connections that would endure. The mother's declaration, the child's growth, and the human's unwavering presence formed a story of courage, care, and trust that would not be forgotten. As dawn approached, the human looked at the child, then at the mother, and felt a deep sense of peace. What had begun in a moment of danger had grown into something lasting, profound, and beautiful. They were a family, bound not by circumstance, but by choice, courage, and the quiet power of human care. And in that, they found a story worth carrying forward. A story that proved that one act of selflessness could change lives, bridge worlds, and leave a mark that would endure forever. Months had passed since the human had first thrown himself in front of the alien child. Life in the settlement had changed in subtle but powerful ways. The incident that had once sparked fear and chaos had become a story of courage and trust. Whispered and shared in quiet corners, discussed openly in gatherings, and taught in small lessons of empathy and care. The human had become an anchor in this changing world, steady and unassuming, yet profoundly influential. The alien child had grown more confident than anyone could have expected. Laughter now filled spaces that had once been silent with fear. Curiosity had returned in full, and the child explored the world with wonder rather than caution. The human remained a patient guide, always nearby, his presence quiet yet commanding in its reassurance. Every step the child took, every new word learned, every new game discovered was supported by the human's steady care. The mother continued to observe, her feelings a mixture of admiration, gratitude, and something deeper she could not yet name. She had long since acknowledged that the human belonged in their lives, that he had earned a place beside her and her child not through obligation but through courage and care. She watched him interact with the child, teach small lessons about life, and offer comfort when fear returned. Each moment deepened her respect and trust. One day, the settlement received news of a festival being organized to celebrate the collaboration and growing bond between humans and aliens. Representatives from both communities were invited. The event promised to be large, filled with music, art, and shared stories. The human was hesitant, preferring quiet and privacy, but the mother insisted he attend. She wanted him to see the broader impact of his actions, to understand how courage could ripple outward and touch lives far beyond a single moment. The festival arrived. In the square, filled with people from both species, children ran freely, exploring, laughing, and playing together. Adults watched, shared conversations, and exchanged knowledge. The human walked beside the child, hand in hand, while the mother stayed close, guiding them both. Cameras and officials tried to capture the story, but the true magic lay in the simple moments. The child learning a new game from a human friend, the mother laughing at the child's discoveries, and the human quietly offering support without drawing attention to himself.